The Bitcoin halving will take place sometime in May 2020. In this video we will talk about what is the halving, how will it affect the price, and what does it mean for miners and the Bitcoin long-term prospects. So Bitcoin mining is a process that keeps the whole Bitcoin network alive, by confirming new transactions and making sure that there is nothing malicious. Mining blocks are created by verifying the hashes on a lottery basis. Yes, lottery. Even though I don't like this metaphor because the entire process is way more complicated, that is in general how mining works. Miners are hashing the block header to find a value lower than the target difficulty. People can't do it because there is a huge number of potential combinations and we would need thousands of years to guess that hash.
And there were a lot of debates about miners and what role they play in the system, but I'm still quite sure that miners are basically employed by a given network, or at least a given network makes an offer to miners that basically says, we will pay you, this block subsidy and these transaction fees if in return you will point your hash power at securing our network.
The most important impact of halving is the fact that it decreases selling pressure in the market, caused by miners. When you have less sellers in the market, the price will have less obstacles to go up. Currently, 1,800 new bitcoins are mined daily, and most of them are sold because miners have to pay their expenses in fiat currency, and they have a huge expenses. So they have to sold majority of bitcoins which they get, and that makes miners the biggest sellers in the market.
I do believe Bitcoin is built for this sort of moment. Bitcoin is built to give people an alternative to store their value that's hard to seize by governments, and it's immutable. And we're seeing a scenario where there's an literal infinite amount of fiat that will be printed, and there's only 21 million Bitcoin. I mean, the classic models show us at like $80,000 to like $300,000 of Bitcoin. So we could see that. We could see something a little crazier, I call this the Bitcoin SuperCycle. So we could see Bitcoin enter a Bitcoin SuperCycle where everyone's seeing that graph of Bitcoin's price, that log price graph. Mm-hmm. And you got the little boom, bust, boom, bust, boom, bust. But what if it went like a level step up on a log chart? If the world truly fears about their money being devalued, every institution, every sovereign wealth fund, every central bank, if they all truly fear that, Bitcoin's not going to stop at 100 or 300,000. It could go to 1 million or 2. That a lot of us predict that, Bitcoin will take decades to reach that price. But the contrarian view, which almost no one talks about, and sounds a little crazy to be honest, I even feel weird saying it, that Bitcoin could hit $1 million in a supercycle.
If you hold Bitcoin, you ought to be feeling pretty good. Bloomberg has just published a 10-page report titled Bitcoin Maturation Leap. Yeah, Bitcoin is maturing, and Bloomberg recognizes this. In fact, Bloomberg's got to be pretty bullish to put out a report like this to all of their constituents, because make no mistake about this, this report is the bullish case for Bitcoin.
Here's a quick tip on Bitcoin budgeting and a concept that I use in my normal, just kind of monthly personal finances that I think about. And it's this: round your change from your checking account down into Bitcoin.
So for instance, Cointelegraph pulled out some of the good quotes. This year will confirm Bitcoin's transition from a risk-on speculative asset to the crypto market's version of gold.
It's a lot of things in the way it's designed. Yeah. So one of the difference is that also when on the Brian implementation, you have to know how much funds you're receiving before setting up the vault, because you are already pre-signing the spending transaction and then you delete your private key. So on our architecture, you don't need that. The vaults are just addresses that are generated in advance. So any money you receive is already behind the vault, right? You don't need to know in advance how much money you're going to receive. You can already give an address to whoever, to an exchange, for example, and whatever amount you receive, it's in the vault.
Still in the experimental phase, or how do you see the current phase of the Lightning Network?
Yeah, I would still say that it's fairly beta. I mean, people who are enthusiastic enough to put some time into it and are willing to encounter the occasional failure, they're able to use it pretty well right now. I would say personally, it depends on a ton of different factors, but a failure rate of maybe around 10% that I've experienced personally. And I don't believe that a payments technology is really going to be capable of going mainstream until the failure rate is well below 1%. And there's a lot of different challenges that will need to be overcome on the software side in order to continue improving that reliability. It's good to know the history and where we came from, but the whole point of all of this is to continue breaking new ground and experimenting with new things and trying to figure out ways that we can continue to fight this battle, because the whole problem with privacy is that it's in direct conflict with the information age.
Ask yourself why. For decades, you have been asked to give more and more. And when a moment of crisis comes and Congress starts throwing money around, we are getting the smallest portion.
We're actually losing the battle for privacy. Really what I have experienced over the past few years is the incredible difficulty to retain your privacy, simply because the default for most of our everyday lives now in society is that we're just giving away information at every turn. And when you try to go against the grain to protect it, it ends up costing you a lot of time and resources, and also can be uncomfortable because you end up creating a lot of friction with the other people you're interacting with, because they're not used to trying to help people retain their privacy.
And then think about now the only thing that we have left, our rights, our ideals, our values as people. That's what they're coming for now. That's what they're asking us to give up. That's what they're asking to change. And remember that from a perspective of a free society, a virus is a serious problem. It is harmful. But the destruction of our rights is fatal. That's permanent.